Is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 106. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him E, a.k.a. Lee James, a.k.a. Sebastian Drew Easy, a.k.a. Eastradamus, a.k.a. Pap E. O'Daniel, a.k.a. The Fashionista, a.k.a. Chili Willy, a.k.a. Joe E. Chestnut, a.k.a. Eon Stonkel. E, happy Thanksgiving, my friend. How was your day?
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you and to all of our listeners after Thanksgiving. I had a great day, man. Just watched some football pretty much the whole day. Kicked it here with Jones and saw some friends a little later. Had some good food, ton of veggies. As you know, no turkey for this guy, but I provided like 10 pounds of veggies. I just put it in a whole like 18-pound actual like turkey aluminum foil thing.
Yeah.
Whipped it all up. So veggies for days.
Did you cover it up like it was a turkey and then just rip off the?
No, that would have been good.
Like veggies,
mold it. No, I did not.
Should have added something like "Say no to turkey" or something on your AKAs today. Well, again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope it was a great one with you and yours. And so the North End Podcast here on a Verde and Black Friday episode 106. Just a couple things to discuss here on a Friday, a holiday Friday. Man, I drove past those San Marcos outlets on the way back from where I was celebrating Turkey Day, and that looked like literal hell on earth, man. Like I don't know how you put yourself through that.
I didn't know people still did it. I thought it was like everyone just did it online. Yeah, no, it was never my jam. I usually don't have enough money to even want to spend on deals.
Right.
So it was like I've never seen why it seems appealing to people. Like, it just looks really uncomfortable.
I've rarely seen a deal, and maybe I'm just not shopping for the right things. I've rarely seen a deal where I'm like, oh fuck, I have to go out on Black Friday to get that. Something I can't get at home.
I knew a couple people who they woke up at 4 a.m. to go do that. It's like, all right, I got to go to bed on Thanksgiving at 5 because it's like, well, shit. All right, I guess you need some stuff.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into some Austin FC talk here. And the first piece of news, since again, I think first time we have congregated since the live stream after the roster decisions came down. I think a week ago, right? That was last Friday. Earlier this week, I think it was Monday. Our boy Tom Bogert, tweeting out that sources telling him and Paul Tenorio at The Athletic that the New England Revolution have agreed to a deal to acquire right back Nick Lima from Austin FC. And we finally have the return information here, $275K in general allocation money coming back our way. The deal cannot be processed as we had expected until the roster freeze ends on December 11th. So that's why we haven't heard anything official from the club on that. They cannot publicize it for a few weeks here, but we were, of course, all in on Moon Tower reporting the trade, but when you get the Tommy Scoops go ahead there, and he did a couple minutes after tweeting that, did credit Moon Tower, so good on you, Tom. So the deal is done. Best of luck, Nick Lima, and I guess, what do you think about the deal? What do you think about the return here for Austin FC?
I mean, we chatted about it a little bit before we got on here and just the amount of money. And, it's like, what, $650,000 with his contract and the $275 game that we just got in return for him. So that is nothing to scoff at. Everyone is pretty much a Nick Lima fan, I feel like. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not, you don't think he's the best player. He does not, shocking you out there on the pitch, but seems like everyone really liked the dude, and I really liked him as well. And he's going to a solid organization. You can't complain. I mean, that's one of the original 10 over there. So I'm wishing him well. I think it's the right move. It's the right amount of return that we can get for a player of his caliber. I think we maxed out on Gam. Like, when I saw that number, I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's much more than I thought we were going to be getting.
Yeah. I mean, I said at the time when Moon Tower originally reported it that I thought it might have been a hot take that people didn't really agree with, but that I didn't really need much of anything back just because his contract off the books in the first place, $400K and an extra roster spot for Roto. was exciting enough for me. So now 650 total in space and the roster spot. And he was really that one contract that we had out there that we didn't know. We don't know when it ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's never been announced by the club. I think what they did was they signed him to an extension when they got him from San Jose back pre-2021. And he has to be expiring or coming up on an option year at the end of 24. So again, I think that there was a relative ceiling on the return you could get for a guy who's expiring.
Yeah, taking all that into account, get 275 for him like that. I think it's awesome. And like, especially after, we did the emergency pod there and we actually got to see the figure with Alex in that DP role. And it was obviously much lower than we were anticipating, but now opening up this additional 650 makes that number even sexier. So I'm all for it. Let's roll.
Yeah. So I guess, and while we're on it, we'll get more into, we'll do a little bit of a mock free agency here in a little bit, take a look at what we've got as the current depth chart for the roster. But when it comes to that Alex Ring auto trigger and the contract being on the books, at least for now, I was reading our buddy Phil West's Substack yesterday. He did a very lengthy Thanksgiving mailbag, which was some great reading. On your turkey day. I think post meal, I kind of put my feet up on the couch, opened that up, and
nice.
Scrolled through. I thought it was really interesting. There was a question from our buddy Dylan who asked, given the revelation about the Ring auto option this past week, what did Phil think the chances were that he begins or ends the year with Austin? And so, let me throw you these figures that Phil gave out. He said, I would put it at about 40% that he's with the club to start the year and about 15% that he ends the year in Austin. He said, based on nothing but just his own hunch, a gut feeling there. But so what do you think about those numbers? Those, especially the before the year number at 40%, that was lower than I would have put it. Again, I'm on the record saying like I would love to have Alex Ring here, just not on that DP tag with that salary. So what do you think about that number? I guess maybe what would your number be? Because again, I think I agree with Phil that this Alex Ring saga, I don't think it's over, right? Whether it's this winter, this off season, the summer, or the end of next year, right? Like I don't think he's super long for this team, but again, I thought he was probably going to be gone a week ago anyways. So what are you thinking about all this?
I mean, again, when we did the emergency pod and like you outlined that maybe some stuff is going on behind the scenes with him and they're trying to move on from him, I just didn't see what avenue we could have to move him before the season starts. Like, I don't know what MLS team would want to take on that contract. I don't know what you would have to give a team to take on that contract, right? Because like theoretically, you'd probably be having to kick back some GAM to them for him or something. Like he's a TAM DP, right? So he can be bought down. So like maybe you throw them some TAM so that they can work him down. I don't know. The
40%, you can't trade TAM. Remember, the targeted allocation money is not tradable. Right. It would have to be. We would have to send GAM along for them to do that. Well, let me offer you this. Phil goes on to say that I still think the 2023 he had doesn't make him very enthusiastic about being at the club. And I think if Rodo Borrell can find a home for Ring with a Bundesliga team or somewhere else in Europe where he could be getting a suitable payday, he'd maybe be good with going. So I see. What do you think about that? Because we can sell him to another team.
Again, I don't know I have no idea what type of market he could be drawing, like what type of interest from teams, or if it's just something where we're trying to push him onto somebody else at such a low rate just to get the DP spot open and that money open. You just don't take a market rate for him, because I mean, obviously trading or selling internationally is a whole different thing than trying to move him in MLS.
Right.
So I thought the 40% figure that Phil said there seems, I mean, it was surprising to me. I think I would have him for start of the season to be here, like at least 60%. I don't know what we can do with him. But again, obviously Rodo does. I don't know if this Nicky deal is something that, like, because they had knowledge that this was going to trigger. It wasn't like I really highly doubt if it was the last game of the season. We either played him to make him get to that X amount of minutes played to trigger it, or he did something statistically to get him to the point where he's being auto triggered. So this had to have been, we knew this, right? So then you see this Nicky deal, and that came out earlier before, the news of that kind of, leaks out from Moon Tower and stuff. So maybe there's something there opening up that type of money as well to use it in a potential another deal. But if Phil would know better than I, if there was a spot for Alex somewhere in Bundesliga or back home in Finland or wherever it may be.
Right. No, I think that is kind of I assume that's what Phil's getting at here is, that was the rumor last season is maybe some of that Claudio turmoil caused a ring transfer back closer to home to fall through. Right. And so if he still has interest in going back to Europe somewhere, again, just getting back to the continent puts you so much closer to home. It's so much more accessible.
Does that matter to him? Is that something that he's vocalized at some point in time? Or it's because we've had that happen with players who have a less tenure here. Like Musa came out and said it with his family. Ruben, obviously his situation is a little different, but they made it clear that they needed to go back. And then I understand what Bill's saying before, this was a rough season on all the dudes. It was a particularly probably very polarizing season for Alex to try to, be pushed around, lose the captainship, lose your starting job. We're playing you at center back where the team is really struggling. You're out of position. And obviously there was some tension between him and the coaching staff for whatever amount it's been exaggerated or not highlighted enough. It did exist.
Right.
So I could see him wanting to get out. But again, you did your Alex Ring impression the other day, and you said, if I just had the season I had and just got triggered for $1.5 million, I'm sitting here saying, what are you going to do with me? This isn't not a me issue anymore. I got my money. I'm here. I'm rostered. I'm salaried. I'm an employee. So what are you going to do now? And again, I just feel like those options are limited. And maybe that's part of the reason why we're so excited about Roto, because he can have those connections, those contacts in different leagues all over the world, where it's now we have a much wider buffet of options that we can look at.
Yeah. Well, it's just something to keep an eye on. I thought we would, it would be interesting to discuss that. And that out of that entire mailbag that Phil had yesterday, that when I read that number, I was because when Phil talks, I listen, or when he writes, I read, what have you.
The 15% to finish the season, that seems much more on target for me.
A summer move.
Sense to me. You can move him later as that contract still prolongs or gets closer to, its end date. But still, at 40%, that means 60% we move him before the season. I don't know. We'll see. It could be a much spicier winter window than we initially anticipated.
That would put a huge smile on my face if they moved Alex Ring again, just because of what it means in accelerating, or it would push the pedal to the metal in terms of improving the top end of this roster, which obviously, you bring in those DP talents that work out, and that's how you win this league. You just look at the teams over the last few years.
And again, I just don't want it to be misconstrued that we don't want Alex here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I absolutely want Alex Ring back on this team. It cannot be on this deal, particularly when we've whiffed elsewhere with the Rigoni, and Rigoni might be even more difficult to move, damn near impossible. So again, with the Diego trade, it was almost like you saw the assets we had available, you see the balance sheet, and it's here's something we can actually move. And if Alex is another one of those pieces, then it just has to be that. And again, it's solely because of this deal and his tag that he's a DP player.
Yep. Well, let's talk some of the international call-ups. We've been kind of monitoring over that international break last week. We had Julio out there. We had Mike out there at the U17 World Cup, Bobo in the World Cup qualifier, starting with Costa Rica, and Julio. Of course, they were playing in the two Nations League quarterfinal matches against Panama. And it did not go well for Los Ticos. Take a 3-0 loss in the first leg. Julio was a DNP that match, didn't see the field. And in the second one, gets the start, plays 80 minutes, but Panama with the 3-1 victory in the second leg. So 6-1 on aggregate for Panama. Coco Carrasquilla leading the way there for the Panamanian team. Julio in that second match looked like he did. Again, I'm just reading stats and didn't have eyes on the match. But completed 39 of his 47 passes, 6 of 8 accurate long ball attempts, 2 duels, 1-3 recoveries, 3 passes into the final third, a 6.2 FOTMOB rating as a center back in a game you lose 3-1.
Yeah.
You probably did all right. But again, FOTMOB ratings don't tell the whole story, of course, because like Landon says, you could put a mannequin out there, and if you bounce a ball off his head into the goal, he's going to get an 8 on FOTMOB. So. But yeah, a bummer result for Costa Rica for sure. But I don't have anything else to say. It was a bummer.
Main mission was not get hurt, so mission accomplished.
Yeah, good call there. U17 national team. Of course, we talked about that matchup against the French to close out the group stage. Went about, I think, as we expected, 3-0 win for the French. But we did get Micah Burton starting at the 9 in that one. Played 77 minutes. He won 7 of his 11 duels, drew 4 fouls, and had 3 tackles. Was subbed out again in the 77th minute, and they were US was down just 1-0 at that point. 2 late goals for France. So still very much a competitive match while Micah was in there. And the US, of course, still advanced after winning their first 2 group stage matches. So faced the Germans in the round of 16. And this was just a brutal ending. Micah coming in off the bench in the 78th during his 12 minutes. He won a duel and drew a foul. And the US immediately equalizes at 2 in the 80th minute right after Micah came on. And then they concede in the 87th to bow out of the tournament 3-2 defeat at the hands of Germany. So obviously I think the team, all of us were hoping for the young boys to advance there, but taking a close loss to the Germans and losing, 1-0 80 minutes into the French, ending up 3-0. It certainly could have been worse. So I would imagine they're not too disappointed with their outing there in Indonesia. Anything for you on the U17s?
No, I would hope that they're not too disappointed. Like you said, that it wasn't like we were playing some crappy countries over there like that, and you felt to me like there's not a whole lot to be ashamed of there. Yeah,
and Micah, Micah playing out of position. Like I don't think we'll ever see him play at the 9 for Austin FC. He's a small guy, right?
Yeah.
So it can be interesting. I assume, especially at the youth levels, where it's just kind of that conglomeration of super talented young prospects, but you have so much talent. Sometimes guys are playing out of position like that. So, good on those guys. Good job coming back home. Nothing to hang your heads about.
Agreed.
Of course, Bobasi Brahwanga out there with his Ugandan national team for the 2 World Cup qualifiers. They took on Guinea and Somalia. I could not find any stats on these, as some of those Ugandan matches in the past have been as well. But we know the scoreline and we know how much Bobo played. We remember the injury scare last week, right, from that Ugandan outlet. And then the source told us that Bobo was in training and then good to go. He started that first match against Guinea, but then comes out at the half. So again, I have no knowledge on if that was injury related or not. But they end up taking, again, just a brutal beat at the end. 4th minute of stoppage time in the second half. Guinea scores to make it 2-1. Uganda takes the L in their first qualifying match. Yeah. But then against Somalia, get a goal in the 4th minute, and that ends up being the winner, a 1-0 win. Bobo off the bench, subs in the 68th. So if it was an injury that was ailing him in the first match to come off early, it didn't keep him out of the next game. He played 22 minutes off the bench, but 1 win, 1 loss in those first 2. I'm sure he'll be back and forth as the qualifying continues here into 2024. So, you get 3 points. Could have been worse.
Absolutely. Didn't get hurt or, make that potential injury worse that he's dealing with right now. Great experience for him. And, man, yeah, I would – I love watching Bobo play, so I would like to try to figure out how to catch him a little bit playing for his country. I don't know if it's feasible, but –
yeah. I mean, if there's ever a chance for us to make, we might have to shell out $5-10 to get a stream of one of those games, but I would certainly be down to do that, to watch him do his thing there, and more of a main central role, I think, for this Ugandan team. So then stateside, the men's national team, played that first leg against Trinidad and Tobago at Q2. That was a little bit of a dicey game there, where Trinidad gets the red card for the double yellow in the first half. The U.S., knocking on the door, pressing, can't get one to go. And then, right around, I think, the 80th minute, Pepe, of course, it's Ricardo Pepe at Q2, sneaks one in there. Fantastic touch, flick to get that one past the keeper. Then Jedi Robinson with the banger, the double backflip, and then an extra third goal at the end. So the final score was not indicative of how close that one was. And then in the second leg, Serginho Dest, I don't know if you saw him flip out and get a red card for dissent. Yeah, it was. You should go watch it. I have no other explanation other than something's going on with Dest off the field that caused him to react like this. Dude, you have to see it. It's the line judge called the ball out when it was maybe still in. And he loses his mind, punts the ball, and is saying things to the official that he knows is so bad he's covering his mouth so the cameras can't see it. Gets tossed. His team, Matt Turner's shoving him off the field. His own goalkeeper. Yeah, dude, it was hell. It was bad. And, of course, red card that early. Yeah. It almost cost the United States the spot, the Copa America qualifier and advancing in the Nations League. It was bad, man. I'm not surprised if he's suspended from the team.
I will take a look.
Yeah, you should. So like I mentioned, though, U.S. does escape Trinidad and Tobago, so they do qualify for Copa America, of course, which is being hosted here in the United States next summer, June 20th. We have the date for the opening match that will take place at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the ATL. Semifinal match is going to take place in L.A. and Las Vegas, and the final, Hard Rock Stadium. Dolphins playing right now here on Black Friday. Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, July 14th. So, man, am I looking forward to that. It would be so fun to watch the U.S. play against a Brazil, against an Argentina in a competition like this. And, man, I'm looking forward to it. I wonder what that's going to do. That's right before the Leagues Cup took place this past year, so maybe no Leagues Cup. I'm not sure. Yeah, unless the MLS is going to play through the Copa America, which they might, but everybody's going to be missing some. We have so many South Americans in this league.
Yeah,
It's going to be interesting to see how the league handles that, and we'll have an idea when the schedule comes out next month. Anything for you on that? I mean, Copa America next summer.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how they're going to play all this. Because we would be missing a ton of players from the
league. Yeah. So the rumor mill does not stop for Thanksgiving. And you were the one who actually alerted me to this tweet yesterday. A fellow by the name of Caleb Pongratz, who I've seen before, specifically interacting with some Diego tweets and some Austin FC fans. Pongratz is, I think, currently a player at Suffolk University. He is a beat writer for the Revs. He's a capo for the Revs supporters groups there. So just looks like young journalist, trying to make his way. And he's reported on various things. I think some ended up being inaccurate a few months ago. So, this isn't the most solid source, but I think it's fair to say that this kid has some ends, at least around the Revs, maybe some relationships with players up there, like we see some Austin fans have here in the ATX. So Pongratz tweeted yesterday morning, or I think it was around midnight on Thanksgiving. I'm told that from multiple sources that there will be 4 designated player spots per team in MLS in 2024. So again, you're the one who sent me that tweet. What were your initial thoughts on that rumor? Again, not the first time we've heard that. And again, where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe we're getting one. What do you think?
That's really where I'm at. It's just like it keeps gaining some traction, and it's still like the other thing about it is that it's not just an unreasonable, crazy idea. Like it makes sense, particularly in this timeline with Messi and trying to make this league much larger, that this would be in play. So like that, I can give it some credit right there already because it makes sense to me. It seems like there has to be some sort of avenue to get to that point. And then obviously, like I'm not familiar with this kid. I saw that, instantly thought of you. What's going on here? I didn't know if you knew him. So like I just wanted to like get your eyes on it. But again, it keeps gaining traction. Kids keeps getting momentum. Yeah, it'd be fun. I'm like, why not? Like the other thing is like, why would we be opposed to it? Obviously we need to make changes for the CBA, the salary cap structure, but like, we already know that a lot of this is antiquated and just outdated stuff that they had to do when this league was completely different and almost folded. So like it's a whole new ball game now. And if that's part of the thing that's like holding this up, obviously, there's all kinds of legalese or whatever is going on behind the scenes with it, but it makes sense to me. So bring it on, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm thinking about what that would do if they're adding a 4th EP slot for next season. What does that do to the salary cap? I think potentially the answer is nothing. And I don't think that is what it should be because your DP is going to be a max slot player. So I think that just would further the gap between the salaries of the DP players, right? Your TAM players, and then how much money you have left to fill out the rest of your roster. If you are a team that uses all 4 spots, like we have teams right now that don't utilize all. So I mean, like that could also do some, I think, negative things in terms of the parity of the league. It puts the pressure on the ownership of some of those teams to spend, which I think it's a good thing in the long run, right?
Yes.
But it could mean bad things for certain fan bases around the league who have ownerships that are less inclined to shell out for 3 DPs, much less 4.
I mean, that's a bad thing anyway. Like it's already a bad thing that's happening. So it's like, I understand that. And you could be looking at some sort of situation with like Major League Baseball, where it's just the teams at the top who are consistently spending to, like you're signing guys for $6 million. They're only $683,000 cap hit or what have you, that number may be. So it's just like, I can see that. And one of the best things about this league is the parity, is the fact that there's a lot of good teams and you see a lot of movement. Despite having some clubs that consistently at the top. But I just think if you want to own a professional soccer team, like this is part of the gig. You have to fill out a good, high quality roster. And sometimes that means shelling out for dudes. And sometimes that means whiffing and like because not everything's going to hit. Like, of course, I understand we're going to get other DPs in, especially if you open up this 4th spot, where guys are frustrated. You got Rigonis all over wherever they may be. So I understand that side of the argument where it's like, we don't want to just have the top clubs who are bringing in the most amount of money being able to just dominate this league. But at the same time, to me, it's like, you got to step your game up if you're smaller and, don't have the type of market.
Yeah. And I think there's other things too that I think that should come along with that. Like, I think there should be some sort of cap spike if you're going to add an extra DP slot. Just because you add the DP slot doesn't mean you're, again, $683K would be the charge for another DP player. And that would really hamstring us if we're just going to add that. That takes our cap so much further down than it already is. So I'll be interested to see if that 4th DP slot does come. I think ultimately, even if they don't change anything else, that's a good step in the direction we want to see the roster restrictions go. And I will credit Seth, who I noticed in the LV Slack the other day was throwing around GAM numbers and kind of talking salary cap nerd shit. And so I DM'd him. I was like, and so what actually caused me to DM him was I saw him suggest that the 200K GAM that we owe Houston for Lundqvist this year, he was saying, to his understanding, we do not owe them that because he's not on our roster anymore. So yeah, that's very interesting. I think that obviously everybody would be happy if that's the case.
Yeah.
But we kind of got to going back and forth about different, just kind of bitching about MLS and all the roster rules and regulations. And he pointed out to me, just by putting it in this context, it immediately clicked the light bulb in my head. I think the number one priority, and again, credit to Seth for this, number one priority is expand the number of senior roster spots. And by not roster spots as a whole, because you think about 20 senior roster spots, man, you can't even have a backup for every player on the field.
That's a very good point.
Can you imagine if the NBA you had 9 roster spots?
Yeah, no, that's very solid.
I think
it's a little different.
You
only get 5 subs. Like, it's a little different there.
Sure, but you can't even have that depth on your roster, on the senior roster, right? Yeah. So he said 23 was his number. I'll follow suit. I think I would like to see that, but that would also have to come, I think, with the commensurate cap spike, right? You have to account for the extra spots counting towards your cap. So the changes could be just sweeping.
Yeah, for real. This could be a whole different ball game that we're looking at, with next season.
Yeah. So let's, we kind of been talking about, we wanted to do a little mock free agency, and really diving into the list without going through every team that has released their options so far. And of course, the free agency list does not include the players that are out of contract or on options that are declined, who don't qualify for free agency because they haven't spent X number of years here or aren't 25 years old. So this is just a very small sliver of the available players, I think, coming up in December that Roto could potentially choose from, but did get a little depth chart here down onto our spreadsheet. So I've got all 17 players that are currently under contract for Austin FC here up on the screen. The guys with the green tint are senior roster spots. The guys with the yellow tint are supplemental. And I took the liberty of putting certain guys like Jesse Zardes, Ethan Finley, John Kolmanich, as the backups at their position. John, because he's coming off the ACO. We have no idea if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. And I think Zardes and Finley, unless you have a differing opinion, I'd be more than willing to hear it, of course. I think those guys, in our ideal world, are backups to start the year come February. So looking at this, do you have any gripes about how I've laid this out here?
No gripes.
Okay, no gripes. So let's say, what is our priority here in terms of the positional acquisitions? I think striker, of course, or forward, whatever you want to call it. I think right wing. And I think the good thing here too is it's not necessarily that we have to get a guy who is 100% a right winger, right? We know Emmy can play over there. We know Ethan can play on the left. Yep. So just trying to put them with their strong feet here on the depth chart. So wingers, I specifically was looking at right wingers. I think
it's right wing for me.
Right wing for you. Okay.
I think right wing should be the priority, because I just feel like if you get a high quality right wing who can make your 9 even better, that you can maximize both there.
Okay. So I also listed, some central midfielders. And then I also listed, I can go ahead and scroll over here. I had central midfielders, left back and right back. So let's start with forwards here. And I've got some salary estimates for you. Again, knowing that we look at our cap sheet and we've got our estimate is 2.634 million in cap space, whether it's true cap space or guys that we would be signing with allocation money. So I've got a 4-pack of forwards here for you. Some of them currently unattainable, but again, I was listing off guys that I think we would be happy that the team, or at least interested that the team signed them. So my number one option here was Romel Kyoto from CF Montreal. He is a little bit older. He fits right into our profile of what our team has liked in the past. I think he is 31 or 32 right now, and coming off an injury filled season there in Montreal, where I think he only appeared in 13 matches, started 10, just shy of 800 minutes, 4 goal contributions. But he was coming off last season, again, Montreal, when they were the third overall in the Supporters' Shield standings the year prior. He started 24 of those matches, played a little over 2,000 minutes, and had 20 goal contributions. So just one season removed from 20 goal contributions. Romell Quioto, my estimate is he would cost us around $1 million. Most of these are just kind of reflecting what their salaries are now. But how would you feel about Romell Quioto for $1 million? And I think you would slot him in as the starting striker. How do you feel about that?
Not great. I don't feel great about any of those names. Okay. I would not be excited about getting any of those players.
Okay, so the other names we have down here for those just listening on the audio version of the pod, Joseph Martinez, and that $2.5 million estimate, of course, would make him a DP. He was on over 4 with Miami this year, according to the salary guide, so that would be a pretty significant pay cut. I do think wherever he goes, he's going to have to take a pay cut, but obviously we'll see. But the thing with him and then Gustavo Bo, I would be psyched to get Gustavo Bo as our starting forward here. But again, we do not have the space, and he's commanding right around $2.5 million as well. So again, that would be if Alex Ring was sold on, across the pond. That would open up that DP spot, and maybe you would be thinking about a guy like that. But again, I'm with you. I don't think any of these guys excite me. Kai Kamara there on about $200K, that he would of course slot in for me as that third striker, the Will Bruin role. And maybe we could maybe you could get him on a supplemental vet minimum deal, right around $100K. But and I think if he was on a supplemental spot, okay. But Kai is, I think, 40 next year.
He's 40 next year. I mean, the only one that I would be okay with is if it was Kai Kamara in the third depth position at the 9 and it's 100,000. Other than that, it's just like, I think that tells you what type of value you're getting there, depending on what you can pay. Like if the best option I feel like, and you feel like, is Kai Kamara at 100K. I mean, obviously Gustavo Bo is like a stud. Again, $2.5 million though. Like I still think I think you could get somebody better. Though.
I think from the entire global market, right? If we're gonna go get a DP forward, if it's from MLS, I think Gustavo Bo is probably maybe the best option out there, at least from the qualified free agents. There's also, of course, the pool of guys that we don't know until their options are declined. But how about this? And I'll shout out LDR for talking about this. I think it was Logan that brought it up. RSL, unsurprisingly, declined the option on one Danny Musovski. Of course, Musovski, almost 28, just here in the next week. Coming off a year with RSL where he started 14 matches, appeared in 24 total, played 1,200 minutes with 9 goal contributions. And Musovski was with LAFC for portions of their championship winning season last year. Of course, was traded to RSL mid-season. I know there was some discontent between Musovski and RSL mid-season. I think he was maybe not with the team for a while because I think they had promised a contract extension that didn't materialize. And he was, I think, probably rightfully a little peeved about that. He was on 100,000 last year. And if you could get Musovski, I think I'd be fine with 150 or 200K as our third forward there. That's a name that, again, I'm not jumping out of my seat if we get that green smoke for Danny Musovski, but I also think you could do way worse with a third string guy, knows the league. He's young, 28 years old, relatively in his prime athletically. I think that's an interesting option there.
I think I would welcome that option. Good depth piece. If you can get him for the right amount of money, that's great.
Yeah. All right, well, jumping back in here to our next position, talking about some right wingers here. Not a ton in terms of the free agents. Omer Fernandez from the New York Red Bulls. Of course, we saw him back in September. We played the Red Bulls in that midweek match. And as I tried to pull up Omer's FB ref here. Just bear with me again. Of course, just not prepared here with the stats. Omer, of course, he's a little bit younger. He would turn 25 right before the season. He was on about 161,000 last year, so I had him that young. I think would probably command a little bit of a raise, especially if we're going out to get him. I think he's a guy that has come up through the Red Bull system. So he was a homegrown for them. He played 1,700 minutes this year, started 22 matches, appeared in 30. Of course, the Red Bulls ended up qualifying for the playoffs through the wild card, but they were not a good team this year. 9 goal contributions in his 1,700 plus minutes. So I put that number at 250K, which I would say, okay, I'm fine with that. Very modestly priced. MLS, a guy with MLS experience on the wing there, and not a black hole in terms of production. 9 goal contributions is not nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Look, that money is solid. Obviously, I like the name after that much more in terms of just the player.
Yeah.
But Aspria's turning 32 coming up, I believe.
Right.
And I love him. I love his game. I love the way he plays. His aggression, his creativity is great. But again, 400K, 31-year-old right winger. I'm not, maybe this is just I have built it up in my head that Roto has so many players that he has his eye on. Has the microscope. He's using the microscope on to find talent in places that we wouldn't think of. So you show me a name like, Asprilla, it's that's a good, he's a very solid MLS guy, but $400,000 with where we're currently at doesn't really move the needle there, and then it comes down to the length of that contract. Obviously, we know we're looking at a 3-window time frame for this entire revitalization that we've been told is going to happen. And again, if you lock that money up for 2 years with an extension or, a veteran guy like that, you're going to command some sort of, guarantees there in terms of the length of that contract, given his age. So I just think it's difficult to work either of those guys in. But I think I agree with you in their ranking for what they're worth, but not from the standpoint that I would prefer Fernandez over Asprilla.
Right. And I did go ahead and pull up the MLS website because, again, we count those secondary assists. So Fernandez, extra assist when you're on the MLS website, 10 contributions for him. And Asprilla, again, only 1,450 minutes this past year, so dealing with some injuries early in the season, but 3 straight years of 10 or more goal contributions in MLS. So, again, I think both of those guys, especially the cheaper they come, I would be fine with as depth guys, but neither of them scream like game in, game out starter to me.
Again, exactly. And then you look at who's would be theoretically behind them. It's Finley, and it's what did we pay him? You know what I mean? What did we just give him if these two names are right there in that range? And hopefully, because what was Ethan on, 450 or was it 4?
He was on 400, I think. I can flip over 425, I believe.
So it's it. I just don't want to have Ethan Finley and either of those two guys that are then eating up almost 800,000, if not more than 800K at that point.
Well, like we said on last Wednesday's episode, if Ethan Finley's agent was me, he'd be here for 250K or something like that. All right, central midfielders here. I have one name and one name only for you, E.
Of course,
Darlington Nagbe. But I have some bad news for you.
Yeah,
you saw it.
Well, I mean, he doesn't want to come here.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't because he signed a contract extension 3 days ago.
Oh, okay. I did not see that.
So Darlington Nagbe off the board, unfortunately for you.
Darn. But, also, he doesn't really fit here.
Oh, we have Danny Nagbe at home.
There we go. I mean, if Alex was pushed out of the picture and then you could slot Nagbe in there, that's super interesting. But if he signed that extension, I mean, he'd already made his intentions clear this season where he was like, this is where I want to be, period.
Yeah.
So I respect it.
All right.
So still trade for him.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about trades with Columbus and Danny, right? Maybe you just swap the like for like players there. I don't know. I hope not. Next up here, looking at a left back, Diego Palacios from LAFC.
I like that.
It's an international spot. He's on 650K. I know you like it. I mean, what do you think about that? Because I mean, I think he's gonna have to come in right around that like max salary budget charge. I think he's on a little bit of a cheaper deal there with LA.
Bro, he's so fucking good. I would give him 650K in a heartbeat. He's by far and away the most attractive name with salary on this very paltry
paltry list one guy
we have here. Look, man, I love Palacios. He's 24. The kid can fly. It fits what we want to do with that wing back kind of attacking position. That would be, I mean, before we got into it, I said obviously my priority was right wing. But if Palacios was on the table, that left back spot, we have a need there. We have a strong need there, and he is one of the best in this league at that position. And he would instantly just make us so much more athletic. Even from the standpoint of like how talented he is, but just speed, like dangerous speed. That kid's got it. I'm a big fan of him. I would love him at that price tag.
I'm not sure why he's not popping up here on the MLS site with LAFC, but obviously we know he's there. 540K on his deal. So again, I would be reserving that max cap hit for a guy like Diego Palacios, and he would take up an international spot. But I'm with you. Like, that's the guy on this list that I'm like, fuck yeah. Like that would have a, you're getting a live stream, emergency live stream for that.
Yeah.
Looking at the right backs here, I've got one name as well. It would be Julian Gressel. Would have to be, I would imagine, a TAM deal on $1 million or so right now. Again, this is just kind of silly because I don't think this will happen. He's one of the big reasons he took, he left a lot of money on the table, I think, with Vancouver to make this trade happen to Columbus midseason because he wants to be on the East Coast, apparently, for family reasons. When DC traded him to Vancouver last year, apparently they didn't allow Vancouver to contact Gressel until the deal was done because I guess they knew. Yeah, I think they knew he didn't want to go.
Wow.
So that's just the name. Again, I going through this free agency list, I was like, man, do we even want to do this? Because there's just not any. There's not really any names. But I think it's good again to illustrate just how paltry the options can be.
Yeah.
Again, just especially with the names that we know are free agents. I imagine we'll get 2 or 3 signings where we're like, oh, we didn't know that guy was a free agent because he wasn't on the list. And we remember him doing this XYZ against us. And all right, we'll take this guy as depth wherever. But again, like we only have so many international spots, right? And I'm hoping that going back to the cap sheet here and our roster designations, I would hope that at some point we're getting Seba a green card or Emmy a green card or Leo, like getting them like Johan Valencia, right? He spent part of preseason back home getting that hammered out so we could open up an international spot because I want as many international spots available for Roto as possible because we know that we think that him working some of his, what we think could be magic would come from overseas in any direction. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, hopefully that helped a little bit more of the visualization of where we stand. I'm hoping for a high profile forward, high profile wing, high profile fullback. And outside of that, I think we're, again, assuming that all these guys are here, I think we're pretty set again, as we wait for more of these guys to come off the books. Because if I can zoom out here on the cap sheet, you look at the 2024 expirations. Again, we don't know now with these auto triggers. That is always going to be a nerve-wracking thing. I guess. Sorry, this is perfectly zoomed for me and not really for you there. But options on 2024 or 2024 options or 25, excuse me, for Rigoni, for Ring, for Matt Hedges, Like if all three of those guys are gone,
Mm-hmm.
that's like it's not half your cap because those 2 DP spots, of course, aren't eating up any more than the max cap hit. But that's over $2 million we'd be freeing up with just those 3 guys leaving and 2 DP spots, right? Which you can spend infinitely on. So again, that's two. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, that's just part of the reason why I also see it hard to move Alex Ring right now. Like, I don't know, like he becomes more valuable as he gets closer to that expiration of his contract. Like it just triggered the extension. So it's just like, maybe that's why, we're looking at 2024 and the part of the 3 window. I just think, going back to our needs, I think we can get a 9 from across the pond from anywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many talented striker dudes all over the world. And it's like, you can grab one of these guys, get them on a solid deal and get them over here to the United States to play, kind of get a bigger market to like be seen. Like, I just think that there's a lot of players that I have no idea who they are, but I think that they exist. So yeah, I mean, still, even if like we've been preaching patience here and 2024 too is just, it's something to be excited about going forward. I know we want to flesh out this team. We want to make it as good as possible going into this next season, but this is a 1.5, 2-year plan. Yeah.
Well, I forget who it was, but this is some of the best fan fiction I think I've seen because it's a non-zero chance. I don't think it's super likely, but like that Alex Ring wasn't playing early in the season because we we didn't want to trigger his auto option, whether it was minutes or games played or what have you.
I said that.
Oh, you said that?
Well, I said it was part of it could have been part of what was going on when he lost his job was like that we knew, and that's why it's even crazier that it kicked in because we would have had that information at the start of the season, and then that would have given his benching even more context where it's like, well, we're not going to let y'all know this, but like he did not auto trigger an extension because he didn't play X minutes,
right?
Which brought me back to the fact that he didn't hit that at the last game of the season.
Yeah. Well, let's close it out with some nonsense here. We took the week off from the bets, at least publicly, last episode. We're going to jump back in here today again, down 45.26 units on the season here, E. And we're gonna keep blasting off on these long shot parlays because what else do we got to lose at this point of the year? Like we mentioned, all 4 of our MLS Cup winner picks are still alive, and of course those for our 2 in each conference. We've got Columbus and Philly, who are both big dogs here this weekend in the conference semifinals. We've got Houston and Seattle, who are both favored in their matchups on the Western Conference side. So I'm going to toss it to you here. I know you've got a little parlay brewing and maybe hedging some of our bets there.
Maybe once we saw these figures. I will remind everyone that this is now single elimination because I forgot that because this is the strangest playoff format I've ever seen. So win or go home is what's taking place right now. So we've learned the hard way on our wallets that home field advantage in this league is very big, very potent. So with that information, we're going to move away from the Columbus Crew, and we're going to move away from the Philadelphia Union. We're going to take Orlando City plus 115 at home, FC Cincinnati minus 120 at home, and then we'll take those LAFC boys plus 185 at Seattle. You put that all together, you make a good little goulash, comes out at plus 1,023.
Yeah, so we'll lock that in. Just, hedging our winner bets. Our happiness a little bit there. But, and if it goes the other way, we'll take it because we can get all 4, Columbus, Philly, Houston, and Seattle all win. We're counting the units then.
Well, yeah, baby.
So, there you go on the MLS side. The Orlando, Cincy, LAFC parlay plus 1023 over there on the DK Sportsbook. I'm going to go back to, you remember at the beginning of the NFL season? When I was throwing out the 3-team teasers, and that was hot for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Then we moved to the 5, the 6, the 7-teamers, and we're missing by 1 here, a point there.
Yep. Picking the Giants there.
I'm gonna bring back the three-way teaser here, E. And we're gonna go a little bit heavy here. We're not gonna mess with the. Let's get to it.
Mhm.
Steelers. Shout out my boy Tim Thompson, Matt Canada, out of there. We're getting the new OC bump here for Pittsburgh. They're favored by 1.5 on the road at Cincinnati, who, like we talked about on the live stream, Joe Burrow out for the year. So Jake Browning under center for Cincinnati. We're taking the Steelers minus 1.5. And this is a 10-point three-way teaser. So that's Steelers now getting 8.5 points on the road. My homerism likes that pick. And that's the one I think is the most shiesty out of these three, because check out these other two. I'm going to the Colts and Buccaneers matchup. We're going to take the over of 44.5, tease that down to 34.5. And then we're going to go to Jags and Texans and take that over of 47.5, tease it down 10 points to 37.5. That 3-team teaser is minus 120. And we're not messing around with these TNEP 1-unit bets anymore. We're going to make an actual bet here, 5 units at minus 120 to win 4.17 units. So that's Steelers getting 8.5, Bucks and Colts over 34.5, Jags and Texans over 37.5. 5-unit 3-team teaser there. That'll wrap up the conference semifinal picks, and that will wrap up episode 106 of the North End podcast. Anything else for you, E, before we get out of here?
I see you're busting out the power tools. That's not just the regular hammer.
Yeah.
That's the power tool hammer.
All right, everybody. If you've got 5 extra seconds to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. And, of course, make sure you mention the North End podcast to all of your Austin FC buddies. Help us grow the podcast in that way. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And, of course, on this episode, hit that thumbs up, like the video. Help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean in the Thanksgiving dinners of the North End. We will be back on Wednesday recapping all of the Austin FC happenings, talking a little bit about those MLS conference semifinals and everything else in between. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Enjoy the beginning of your week, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday. Until then, he's E. I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.